we've been mostly hearing about, from people in the public sector in one form or another about all the different aspects of the future of work. And this is our chance to kind of pivot over to the private sector or industrial kind of perspective. And we're really, I'm honored to be joined by, three of our stalwart employers in the SME's development over the last 10 or 20 years. I think that we'll have a chance both maybe to have a sense of just in a real way, all three of these companies are infrastructure providers for our economy, right? And they had a massive pivot to have to do as this pandemic hit, and the demands on that infrastructure, I'm sure, skyrocketed. So I hope we'll get to do a little bit of geeking out, and then also get that sort of employer perspective and large organization perspective about both the pandemic, but even more broadly, the future of work and how these folks see it changing. So I'm Rogers Weed. I'm the managing director of a firm called Cobotics that is a computer vision company based over in Bellevue. And I previously worked in the state government for Governor Gregoire, so have a bit of a public sector perspective, and I'm on the board of the Tech Alliance. So that's what connects me here today. I'm joined on my immediate left here is Paco Galanis, who's He's the site lead and director of engineering for Google here in the area. And then in the middle is Teresa Hudson, who's vice president of tech and corporate responsibility for Microsoft. And then to my far left, Rajiv Rajan, who's vice president of engineering and head of the office for Facebook in the Northwest. So again, we've got really a great set of representatives here to help us a little bit understand how both the future of work more broadly and how the pandemic has impacted them. So I'm going to start, and the first question is just, obviously major employers had to pivot very quickly on a number of levels as the pandemic showed up, a little under 2 years ago. And so I'd like each of our panelists, and we'll just start with Paco and move across here, just to share for a few minutes their perspective on how their organizations faced the pandemic, what pivots they had to make, maybe both as employers, but also as critical infrastructure providers. So Paco, you want to get us started?
Yeah, thank you, Rogers. And I'll go first. I'll break the ice. It's always a little unnerving going first, but I'll do it. So thank you everyone for being here, and thank you for inviting us. It's a great topic. Looking back a year and a half ago, I can't believe it's been this long. The thing that looking back, I'm impressed with is how fast we transitioned to this new world. It felt like it was overnight, really. Where one day we were in the office, and the next day it was pick up your desktop, your laptop, go to your home, and dial in, and we're all running. Actually, that was pretty seamless, I would say. Partly because the tools were there. I think this is the point that you were making, Rogers. Is we've been investing in infrastructure at the networking level, data centers, cloud technology, that kind of stuff for many years. We've been working on things like resilience processes and whatnot, and I think that really helped us make this pivot very fast. And I can go a little bit into some of the details of what happened there, but I think that was something that was definitely they are in place for us to make this transition fast. The other one was, Google has been working on many offices across the world for decades. So we had a little bit of that muscle of remote working. It's slightly different. It's not like working from home, everyone in their own cube, in their own cave all day long. But we had some of that muscle built in, and that helped us really make the transition. Just one last thing too. I think that first transition was, in retrospect, the easiest. Then we realized that we were in it for much longer than we thought, and then we had to deal with things like, wellness and connectedness and more of the human factor that I don't think we were prepared for that as well as we were making that pivot initially.
Great. Thank you for those thoughts. I love that you said dial in. That sort of dated yourself a little there, Paco.
Right there.
Okay. All right. Teresa, over to you.
Well, thank you for breaking the ice. It's not always you see the three companies on the stage in the same place. We tend to compete, but I think actually the fact that we are kind of speaks to what is powerful about what happened here After the pandemic, Microsoft, the Puget Sound is Microsoft's home. We have about almost 60,000 employees who work here, and really have long thought about our responsibility to take care of our community as well and create more opportunity. So when we started to hear news, we first heard it from some of our global colleagues that COVID was happening, and then started to see the local cases. We worked pretty closely with elected officials and health authorities to say, okay, we've got to make sure that we're not spreaders, right? You have 60,000 people coming to your campus and then going back out into the community. So we closed fast, similarly. But there were like immediate implications for it. Some of those are really kind of unexpected, maybe not terrible, like traffic got good for a minute, and there was if you ever had to travel, you didn't have to have anybody in the middle seat. But some of them were much more serious. We have a lot of workers on our campus. Our employees could work from home. That was easy, right? We just kind of knew most of our employees could just turn on their computers, but we had shuttle drivers and cafe workers and all sorts of people who really needed us to be in the office for them to do their jobs. And so we kept paying their salaries throughout the pandemic, actually, until we could get them back to work. We thought a lot about, how we could use the technologies we had to help other people in the community figure this out. So state agencies, we worked with Department of Health and the Employment Security Department to kind of help them scale up, because all of a sudden they had a lot more demand on them, and we needed to help them because that, again, it was impacting the people around us. And then we started thinking about what could we do? What could we bring to bear? Just in terms of help. We all know there were a lot of supply chain issues, that continues to be an issue. It's actually really hard to predict how much food you need on your campus right now, because you don't know how many people are coming. So we've been doing weekly donations to Food Lifeline to kind of help with that. I think the coolest thing that I've literally ever got into work on, literally in my life, was helping to set up a vaccine clinic on our site. And we worked with King County and local hospitals. Starbucks came over and showed us how to think about people flow, because we didn't really know how to do that. And we set up a vaccine clinic in our conference center that we normally just hosted people. And we provided 175,000 vaccines on our campus, which was pretty amazing. And it was just so cool to be a part of it. But one of the other things that was really cool is as we were doing that, we were talking about it to our employees, and people kept reaching out and saying, what can we do? Can we volunteer? Can we go help? Can we do something with that? And we didn't need it. We didn't need their help because, we were providing the space, but all those hourly workers that we'd been paying, we actually asked them to come in and help us with the vaccine site, because they were like, we would actually like to do something. So they helped us with the wayfinding and stuff. So we tapped into our employee base to help with the site at Lumen Field. And we were so lucky. It's so amazing to be a part of this. We had over 1,300 employees volunteer and give over 9,000 hours. And I did that, and it was genuinely I volunteered down there, and it was genuinely the best. I guess it's not down there from here. Where am I even? But it was actually the best thing I've ever done in my life. Especially then, we were in such dark times that getting to do something hopeful together in a community that was optimistic, and literally every person that was there was happy. Have you ever been anywhere
It was
where
like everybody's birthday when they were showing
exactly.
up for their
Everybody
vaccine,
there was
wasn't
happy.
it?
All the vaccinators were happy. All the volunteers were happy. Everybody was happy. It's like you go to a sporting event there and not everybody's happy. So anyway, half the people are
Especially
sad.
this year.
Right. So anyway, it really, to me, really demonstrated the power of this community and the business community here that works in public-private partnership to solve hard problems. So I'm proud to live here.
Great, thanks, Teresa. Rajiv.
Yeah. Well, I think Paco and Teresa have covered a lot of the similar themes. At that time, we were called Facebook. The future of work. Still Facebook.
My bad.
All of the same themes, kind of happened at that time. One of the things that was really amazing was all the major employers in the region. We got into a conf call and we decided pretty quickly that we're going to shut down our offices. I think that was a great example of collaboration in the region, and I think forums like this, Tech Alliance, I think will help us solve future problems where we need to come together. God knows, climate change, there's all kinds of, difficult problems to go solve. So that was interesting to see. We moved pretty fast. We did a few immediate things. We took care of our janitorial and kitchen staff and made sure they were on payroll, took care of everybody, from that standpoint. And then we reached out to local government to see, how could we help? We gave free ad dollars, looked to help with local alerts and information dissemination and things like that. So leaned in pretty heavily to areas where we could help. We did some loans for small businesses. We reached out wherever we could help the community. We looked at programs that we could lean in and do more. From an infrastructure standpoint, it was interesting. I'm a server person, and we looked at our graphs, and all the graphs were like through the roof. We knew supply chain was an issue, and we were like, oh my God, are we going to even survive, the peak, capacity? Because normally you plan for stuff, but you don't plan for the peaks that happened. Interesting use cases, people were going live on Facebook. One very interesting use case was, I think in Italy early on, the churches started doing lives on Facebook. And so we quickly figured out ways to reach out to churches and see, how else we could support them with tooling and things like that. So anywhere, our tools got used, we looked to help and see, what else we could do. We pivoted pretty quickly as a company onto a number of different, we called it COVID projects. What can we do in the Facebook app? What can we do in Instagram? Or wherever we could put information front and center, we try to do that. As a company, we were pretty set up with distributed centers. Seattle is the biggest center outside Menlo Park. We have many locations around the world. We use video conferencing a lot. So our culture was already set up to be able to work remotely, if you will, just like what Paco said in Google. And so that part was pretty easy. Oh my God, thanks for the internet. I started in Microsoft as an intern in Windows 95, and if the pandemic happened in 1995, I guess we would all be playing solitaire on our PCs. So in that sense, I think the tech industry really, brought obviously the internet, but also video conferencing, our phones, our laptops, webcams. Thank God for DoorDash and Instacart and Amazon and so on. I mean, everything came together in so many ways in our lives, and I think all the companies also leaned in where they could. So it was really great to see all of us step up and kind of do that. I think in terms of what we could learn from that, there's just two things that stand out. One is interdependence. We are all dependent on each other. I mean, no big company or no big organization stands in an island. We have to work together with the community. Tech Alliance and other forums like this, I think, is great. We need that. And the second thing is resilience. I think that's an important attribute to think about as an organization. What is your culture? And how does your culture help you get through it? I tell people in the company all the time that, we had this huge bank balance of culture, and that's what got us through COVID. I think when people talk about, oh yeah, we got through it, and I'm like, yeah, but more than half the company right now has not even been to an office, and we need to go back and renew that culture and figure out how to go do that. So those are some of the themes that stood out for me as we kind of leaned into the pandemic.
Great, thanks, Rajiv. A little bit of an interesting question just to the two engineering guys on either side. I mean, I was just blown away at how little failure I saw of the digital infrastructure, as just I know that the level of demand on it must have been exponentially higher. I mean, Teresa, if you have anecdotes on this too, but what did you guys have to spin up more data centers? Were there some kind of magic software thing that could, I mean, how did you manage to not have widespread failures of your infrastructure when that happened?
Yeah, so we'll spill the secrets now, right? Now, it really is, part of it is what I mentioned before. There are two things there, really. One is we've been investing in this for the long haul, and we've been investing, not just Google, but everyone here in this panel, and in general, the tech industry. You plan ahead for what you think the demand is going to be a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, right? And you need to be building up towards that. So that helped us because we had already, material in place. So that was a big part. The other part is what I think Rajiv also mentioned quickly is, we do a lot of resilience exercises of what if this data center comes down, how do we keep everyone running without loss of service to the user, right? And that kind of flexibility is what allowed us to reroute traffic where it needs to be. If we see demand on search, that's where the machines go. Search will use that capacity. Or if there is, Google Meet, video conferencing, or, collaboration tools, which is really what really took off in YouTube as well. That's where the capacity goes, right? So we have that flexibility to reroute our capacity, our network, our infrastructure to where it's needed, really very much on demand. And that's really the magic, if you want to call it that way. It's a lot of work, though.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, all of what Paco said, we do a ton of resiliency disaster exercises, shutting down data centers and shutting down regions, and that really helped us quite a bit. If we had not done that, we would be toast. We had to do a lot of, there were a lot of fires. I remember one where early on in Italy and Europe, it was pretty difficult. And so what we did is we worked with ISPs to reduce the default of videos on Facebook. We went from 1080p, then we went down to 720p, then we went down to like 480, and it's like, okay, you can barely see the video, but it's okay, you can at least see the video. But we're not hogging as much bandwidth, with the ISPs, because we wanted people to be able to access, services and work from home, and not, have our services, kind of dominate the internet. And so we were cognizant of our role in terms of providing the services we do, but also making sure there's enough bandwidth for everything else people were trying to do from their homes. There were a lot of fire drills to see what are the most essential services. Could we run things, off peak, especially background jobs? How can you go and run those off peak so that you have time during peak hours? A lot of engineers, a lot of people really stepped up, in massive ways. And sometimes I feel like that story needs to be told, because it's so, geeky, internal kind of stuff that doesn't really make it out there. But a lot of people really stepped up and did some massive things.
Maybe just to add to the people aspect, because of course all these data centers have people running them, and there were times where we were worried about outbreaks, and we needed to be able to plan to move people from data center to data center, which sounds great, but sometimes those are across borders. So we had to do a lot of work to think about, okay, what kind of documentation do people need to get into a country? We were doing these special letters for people because there were places where during serious lockdowns, people couldn't get to work unless they had a letter saying that their work was critical. And so there's a lot of just kind of behind the scenes stuff, to your point, that wasn't really visible as people kind of were hunkered down in their homes, of just how do you get the people the sort of people who have to be there. And, I think we've heard a lot about the people, the frontline workers and healthcare, but, people who were working in data centers, really actually kept the economy going, because they had, they kept, you guys can speak to that more, but I remember just trying to be how do we get people to where they need to be?
Yeah, I like to say, you don't appreciate a plumber until you need one.
Exactly.
Right? It's exactly the same. The same here. You don't really appreciate what it takes to keep the internet running until you are in a situation like this, where you cannot count on someone being there 24/7 because they may not reach the site, or you need to get them across boundaries. And just the logistics of figuring out who is essential, who needs to be there, how do we get them there and keep them safe at the same time? Because now we have this new world where it's not just walking in the front door and getting back to work. Now you have to think about how you keep them safe, all of them. And it was really a huge effort as well, not just technical, but in terms
Practical.
of
Just really practical.
very practical.
Right, yeah.
Were your companies actually communicating? You talk about trying to be responsible about the amount of demand on the internet infrastructure that Meta was generating. Were you guys talking between your companies too about this stuff, or not? Or is there an intermediary that helped with that, or?
I'm not privy to that, but I know that in general, these type of discussions happen. It's not just our companies; it's the ISPs, it's all the infrastructure providers. They are seeing also these traffic spikes, and they coordinate. They coordinate with the multiple players, and we're part of those conversations.
Yeah.
This is an ongoing basis, right? It's not just when crisis hit, but obviously in this case, it turned out to be critical that we had those relationships already there.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially on the internet traffic. The amount of traffic we, in just the three companies represented here, generate is huge. And so there was coordination at many different levels, and also with ISPs who work with all of us. So it was a pretty cooperative dialogue throughout all of that.
Plus, a lot of us were learning from each other. How are you dealing with this? How are you spacing desks? Like that kind of, I mean, like I said, the number of conversations I was in about like, how are you spacing desks? How often are you cleaning? Especially early before we had much guidance. And so there was, I think we were also optimistic we were going to be back in offices before now. But there was a ton of information sharing, I think, across sort of corporate functions to just kind of say, well, how are you dealing with this kind of thing? Less kind of on the infrastructure side and more just kind of on the practical, like, you know, how are you doing this stuff, which was really actually quite extraordinary, I think.
I agree, and you know, part of it is you are trying to figure out what to do, how to do best for your employees, right? And are we going to call them back now, or do we have to wait 3 more months, right? And then that's a kind of conversation that, what are you doing? How are you thinking through? Because you know, you don't want to necessarily put your people at risk. So definitely that conversation was very interesting, and see how every, you know, from outside, it looked like every company was making an announcement one after the other, you know. But I think there's a fair amount of keeping tabs on everyone and making sure that, as a region, we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, you notice that the announcements would be a little, you know, time delayed, but there was a lot of behind the scenes and then you'd see that the announcements were pretty similar, you know, differences in culture and so on, but there was a lot of behind the scenes. For sure.
Yeah, so 2 points. One to me is just that this is all private infrastructure that, you know, performed. I haven't read at least the stories about how remarkably that infrastructure performed through, you know, massive disruption. But I think it's just an interesting fact that you all were able to flex as much as you were and largely, you know, deliver when the whole world needed your help in a big way. So, but the other thing is, as a person in a small tech company now in the region, you know, I think a lot of small companies in this region look to you all's policies for guidance on how to manage our own things, because we don't have the resources to do all the deep research and think it through in, you know, a lot of detail. So we'll just look and see, you know, how you guys are managing things, and that has a lot of influence on what a lot of us smaller players in the ecosystem are doing. So appreciate your leadership on that. Flipping then a little bit, so Teresa, I want to come to you. And I mean, the whole premise of this conference is that the future of work has been changing all along, right? And that the pandemic was just an accelerator for that. So I'd love your perspective, if you can, on sort of what parts of how the pandemic has changed workforce do you think will stay, and what parts do you think will maybe not stay as we move forward, hopefully eventually, from this thing we're living through still?
It's funny you say that, because I was thinking about the right phrase for this, and it's sort of like suspended anticipation is the phrase I've come up with, which it just feels like we just keep waiting and waiting. I will just say that at one point I was like, hey, so we sent everybody home and we need to get everybody back. Is anybody working on that? I will tell you when I did that. That was in April of 2020. So you can see that I'm an optimist.
How many letters are left in the Greek alphabet? Maybe that's how many more variants we have.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I mean, you know, look, I think we really realize technology allows us to do a lot and allows us to connect a lot, right? And I think there are certain things. I think we have a lot to learn about what it looks like when it's sort of like open and everybody's kind of, we are past the suspended anticipation stage. But I do think, you know, look, people could participate in meetings in a different way. More people can listen in this meeting. You know, we have people virtually. That's wonderful. We have people in person. That's wonderful. I think the hybrid piece of it is really opens up opportunity for a lot of things. It makes makes work more flexible. It made school possible-ish. I have kids. You know, it opened up access to healthcare. So there are a lot of ways in which I think it did really, really help. And I do think that we will need some in person. I don't personally think we can go to an entirely remote. And most people aren't talking about entirely remote, but I don't think it's binary. But I do think there is some in-person needed. You know, it is nice to be in a room with people. It is nice to get feedback. I did conferences during the pandemic where I was just staring at a screen. And I was like, I don't know, was that funny? Was that stupid? I don't know. This is better. That's better. You know, I think it depends on the kinds of jobs people have, and we'll need to be more thoughtful about that. I think it may depend on the places people are in their lives when you start a job, if you move to a new city, you may want to go to work because you want to meet people and you want to make friends and you want to ask those stupid questions that you have when you're starting a new job to the people around you, and sending an IM feels intrusive. But then there are other times in life where it may be that it's hard to get home to pick up your kids. And so there's a stage of life component to this. So we're going to have to be really thoughtful about that. The other thing is, I think there's a kind of like, some people like to go to the office. I'm one of them. I miss people. This is why I asked the question in April of 2020, because I was like, can I get out of my house? But I do think that there is, there's sort of a sense that like, everybody wants to work from home. I'm not sure everybody does want to work from home, because I like the separation of home and work. So I think we're going to need to be sort of more like really willing to learn about that. And I think one of the most important things, kind of aside from technology, but that is a part of all organizations, is management capability. We're going to need really, really good managers to pay attention to what people need and to make sure that they're being assessed fairly, that they're being trained, that they're being onboarded. And that's going to be really, really, really important as we move forward. So I'm ready for the suspended anticipation to end. But I think we've got a lot to learn kind of in the year or two after.
Great. Thanks, Teresa. I'm going to move to different questions with the other two panelists, just so we move along and have time for your questions at the end. But, Paco, I know Google has done a ton of research into the workplace and the nature of the workplace. And, so sort of moving maybe away from the pandemic particularly, I mean, how does Google envision the modern workplace, and what are the key elements of what you all see there?
Yeah, so I actually would like to build a lot on what Teresa was talking about, because we are seeing the world in very much in the same way, with the same eyes. Google has been always very office focused. We believe that collaboration happens when people are together. It's not just your teammates, it's interactions that happen that you didn't expect at lunch, etc. That's where ideas come from. That's where you incubate that kind of innovation. So we've always believed that co-location is important. At the same time, as I mentioned before, we've always been running offices all over the world. So we are very used to having small teams collaborating with small teams all over the place, all over the world. And we believe in that mode of, talent wants to be where they want to be. They have their life there, they have their support there, uprooting everyone and making them go to Mountain View, as the case may be, doesn't work at scale. So we have that muscle in. Fast forward to this current situation where now everyone is at home. The granularity of those interactions is very, very different. So we've learned that this working from home actually can work. We've figured out how to keep the company running, not just our company, but lots of companies are relying on this infrastructure, and everyone has figured out how to work from home. But we don't think this is a either-or situation, right? Like Teresa was saying, I agree. Like this hybrid world, we need to figure out how to make it work. How we take the best of both being in the office and being able to, be from home when you have to. So we think of this in terms of. We look at the hybrid workspace in terms of three different buckets, if you will. The first one is, policies in the company. When are you allowed to work from home? Am I supposed to be in the office or near the office all the time? So we are trying to put policies in place to increase flexibility. Things like, well, we have a rule of think about your work day if you are supposed to be in the office as more like 3-2. 3 days in, 2 days you work from whatever suits you best. We are trying to increase flexibility in terms of, I need to make a trip to see my family in another country. Can I work from there? Why don't you work there for a month, up to a month? That kind of extra flexibility. So these are policies that we want to put in place as a general framework for our managers to be able to make decisions of, yeah, of course you can go, right? So that's aspect number one. The aspect number two that I think is, once you get to this, then what are the tools that allow me to really be successful today in the office, tomorrow in my home, a month from now, working from, say, Spain, as my case could be. How do we make all this happen, right? And keep that productivity and that connection and that well-being for all our employees. So, here we are looking at technical solutions, things like, and this is a case that is pretty close to our heart. We moved to work from home, and everyone decided to start using emojis on the video call, right? To yes, thumbs up, good idea, love it, etc. Now you go back into the office. People that are in the office don't see that. Right? They don't have the controls to say I love it too. And now we are 10, and who says I love it, right? Right, and now we all do this. But that doesn't translate exactly. It doesn't quite translate. So how can we make these tools more adaptable to the office, etc.? And that's a small example, but it shows you that it goes all the way, right, from big things like infrastructure and policy to small little things that actually make this more human and more tractable. And the third part is, how do we think about physical spaces? How do we think about our offices? I know that probably you've all read the article that came a few months back with balloon walls and whatnot. I think that's I'm not sure that we'll see this in our Washington offices anytime soon. But the idea is, if we are providing a space for collaboration, probably doesn't make sense to just have primarily desks all over the place in a few conference rooms, right? How do we reimagine that space for teams to come in, collaborate when they need to? Do they have the tools that they need? The conference room, the whiteboard, or whatever they need to be able to connect with people that are not in the room at the same time. So that's the kind of thing that we're working on. So those three tiers is how we think of the workspace in the future. And to be honest, we don't know how this is going to end up. A lot of it is we are experimenting, we are playing with this and see what works and what sticks. And so far, so good, but it's early days.
Great, thanks a lot for that answer. All right, Rajiv, I mean, it's a tech panel, right? So I want to ask you if you can geek out a little for us and maybe look forward. So, maybe I know all three companies have been investing in AR and VR to some degree, but I know that Meta has, and now that you're Meta, that's front and center, right? So maybe tell us a little bit. Like, I think we all felt like the tools we had were much better than we thought they would be, but they still weren't like this, right? And I guess the question is, can we get closer to like this with the distance, or are there other things coming in the future about the workplace that we can look to say maybe if this, God forbid, ever happens again, we'll be in an even better position? Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we believe in the future of work, or at least the way we envision it, so much that we changed our company name, to Meta. We really do believe in this metaverse, as Mark has talked about, and some of the articles have come out on it. We do have a product already called Horizon, where you can create your avatar, and you can. It's just amazing. If you have not used it, you should definitely try it out. Obviously, you've got to put a Quest 2 on, and just so many hours you can use that. But it's an amazing experience. You literally actually feel you can turn left, turn right. You can where the voice is coming from. There's 360 spatial audio, as we call it, and so it's much better than a 2D dimensional Zoom screen with a little square for each human being. So the goal is like the mission of Facebook or Meta is really, for us, technology is about connecting people. That's our whole mission. We're not here to, that's the purpose of the company, is how do we connect people? Obviously we did that through social media, but in the future we think, you will be able to do this in three-dimensional spaces through AR, VR. And the goal is not to create some kind of like sci-fi kind of thing where you lose connection with people. It's really actually to make the connection with people that much more better, because we are going to be in this world forever, I think, where it's going to be some people remote, some people in the office. Even the people coming into the office are going to be coming in 2-3 days a week. And so how do we make an experience where no matter where you are, we all feel together, we feel that connection, and we can have that human experience? That is really what we are after. And technology is just a tool towards that. It's not really about technology. It's about how do we get human beings to connect and do stuff like we do every day. And so we are very excited about that. Beyond the technology, we are also got some workspace things that we are doing. We are really experimenting with furniture and spaces. And so spaces like Town Hall is a space that we are excited about, where people who are remote and who come in occasionally, where do you come in and work? Is there a place you can camp and sit, or do you have a desk? Do you have some coffee nearby? Do you have an IT help desk? So spaces are important. Also furniture, I think you can do a lot with furniture. We are coming up with phone booths and sort of single person sofas that you can sit in and join a meeting from that location, versus like actually going into a conference room if you don't want to do that. So we're doing a lot of experimentation there. But I'd say the biggest thing is we have sort of designated 2022 as a year of learning, because I think the most important thing is being able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. We really don't know how things are going to evolve, and being flexible, keeping an open mind, and being willing to learn is going to be the most important thing. And then, finally, I'd say we don't have all the answers, by the way. We are going to learn from other employers, other companies, other technologies. Even the metaverse, we have said, is going to be an open platform built by many companies and everybody. And it's not something that we aspire to be the only company going and building the technologies. And so it's something that I think we collaborate with community, with government. Tech Alliance, I think, is a great forum. That's how we are going to really navigate the next 5, 10, 20 years. No one's going to do it on their own.
Super. All right. I'm going to have one more quick question for the panelists, but then we'll open it up to questions. So if you have a question now, be getting ready to move towards the microphone. So I guess the last question to you all, and it's there if you have an answer, but if you don't, that's fine. But we do have policymakers in the room at local and state levels, at least, maybe even a federal one here or there. Are there things from the public sector or public policy perspective that you think were either enablers and accelerators for things that you had to do in the last 2 years, or that could perhaps could be improved moving forward, so that if this happens again or something like it, you're better able to do the things that you've had to do both as employers and technology providers to help us cope with and be resilient, to use Paco's word. So thoughts, Teresa?
I can jump in. I think we've discovered where we're not resilient through the pandemic in terms of equity, really. We need investment in schools. We need investment in infrastructure, and not technology infrastructure. I mean, not this kind of technology infrastructure, but like broadband infrastructure and digital skilling. And we need policy to support it. Great news that the infrastructure bill has gone through. We need that money to get to our communities, because what we've realized is being connected is opportunity. And if people aren't connected, they miss out on opportunity.
Super.
Yeah, plus one to that. I think equity is top of mind for us as we look at whether it's hiring people in or overall society. One of the things we did early on in the pandemic was, I think, a few companies, we got together to work with the Seattle School District to figure out how they could shift to online, because every school district was shifting online. And so how can we work together across industry and society and policy to come up with things that help with equity, I think is going to be important. The other thing I would say is just getting to know each other a lot better. Sometimes when I see some of the discussions on technology, both in Congress as well as in the media, I think there are certain tropes that get pulled out, and it's like, hey, if you all just, these are hard problems. These are not easy problems. Nuance matters. I think it's important for all of us to really, really have the dialogue, understand the issues at depth, and not get sort of carried away by the surface, tropes that sometimes happen.
And you're up on LinkedIn, so anybody that wants to reach out and connect with you to have that dialogue,
absolutely, yeah.
Okay, great. Paco.
Yeah, no, just a big plus one to what both Teresa and Rajiv said. In particular, I think, as I was saying, as the pandemic rolled after 3 months and 6 months, and we started seeing these, mental health issues pop up and whatnot, it all boils down to the support systems of our society really broke down. We had people taking care of family members and not being able to work because of that, or taking care of kids, or trying to homeschool them, as the case may be, and whatnot. And it's just a matter of those support systems really fell down. I hope that that's not going to be the case once we get over this. But resiliency in those systems would definitely have helped.
Super. All right. this is your chance. If anybody has any questions they'd like to ask any of our panelists. Do you mind hopping up here to the mic? That'd be great, just for people online so they can hear the question. And if you could just say who you are and what organization you're with, that'd be great.
Hi, Curtis Emerald, University of Washington. So I've worked at all these firms. Thank you all for all the support throughout the years. One element that's interesting to me in my new job as a professor is the student and recruiting side of what you all do. Some other firms I've been hearing, let's say a local dog walking firm, has been saying that the perks are less enticing to employees, which were like having your dog in the office because they're not spending a lot of time in the office. Having worked at some of these places, the perks are a big deal. How is those kind of cultural elements going to change in recruiting as people, as I have heard, become more kind of mercenary in, I'm going to live in Salt Lake City anyway, so I just want money.
Yeah, I can take that. I think, Teresa, you made the point earlier about being flexible with respect to how people come into the office and really being open to how things would change. The perks are there to support employees. They're not, you can say free food in Facebook, or back in the day it was free soda in Microsoft.
We still have free soda.
Yeah.
No free food.
Yeah. It's really to support our employees and take care of their needs. And so during a time where everyone was in the office and you wanted those support systems in place, that's what we had. And now in this new world, as things change, we'll look for other things that people are looking for. And it's really about finding those things that help them give the flexibility in terms of when you come into the office, what do you need. I talked about the town hall space that, you have IT help, you have coffee, you have, food, you have a place to work, things like that. So we'll evolve the perks, as you call it, to meet the need of the hour based on what people want.
Yeah, and to pick up on something that you've talked about a lot, one of the big needs right now is mental health. And so mental health support for employees. We found parents really needed some time off, so we provided specific pandemic leave for parents during the pandemic. But I do think it is listening, figuring out what people want and need. And then, you sort of decide whether that fits with your company or not, right? But it is really kind of to meet the need at the time. And I don't know if you would.
Both of you put it perfectly. I think we see these perks as support for our employees in the office. We provide food because two things. One, we like people bumping into each other. So that sense of community, that sense of connectedness forms in these spaces. And also because, it's hard to have to leave the campus, go find food, etc. Right? So it's also support for our employees in that regard. So I don't think the same perk, you cannot say, well, if I have food, just to pick on that one, free food in campus, I should have free food when I'm at home. I don't think that supports you in the same way, right? Just to pick up on one, right? But it's about finding the thing that is going to make your life possible and better in the situation that you are, right? Another silly example, if you will, right? We have free massages in the office at Google, right? We cannot send someone to your house on demand, right? Probably that won't scale. It's probably not the right perk, if you will, right? So it's all about finding the thing that really supports our employees and thinking of what other programs can we put in place that really make that experience valuable.
Yeah, and with all that said, my middle son works at one of these three companies. I won't say which, but he was dying to get back to the office because of the free food. So
It's not Microsoft. He doesn't work at Microsoft.
The thing I missed was early on in the pandemic was the free haircut.
Right.
Or just a haircut anywhere.
Any haircut.
Any haircut would do.
engineer, exactly. Okay, anything else?
I might take organizational privilege or whatever and ask. I thought Rachel's question to the transportation panel about what keeps you up at night was a good question. But I want to ask the three of you a different question, which is, what gets you up in the morning? What is it about the future of work that you find the most exciting right now?
Yeah, I can give it a first stab. All right. To me, is the thinking about how we can bring people again together and bringing that connection again. That's what I think about a lot, and how we can enable it. Right? How can we enable? We have close to 50% of our employees are new from the last 2 years. They've never seen an office. They've never. Some of them have never met their coworkers. How do we bring people in, and how do we start rebuilding those ties? How do we start rebuilding that, organizational muscle again? That's what I'm excited about. And then of course there will be many problems, hitches, tooling that we need to fix, but it's the bringing people together that I really look forward to.
I am so optimistic about the workforce of the future, current workforce, and looking forward. The amount of just sort of passion people bring to the workforce, that is sometimes a challenge, but I think it's the people who are entering the workforce and what people expect from their employer now, they have high expectations, and that sort of sets the bar high for employers and for companies. And so that's both a little terrifying and also really exciting.
Yeah, I think both of those answers are true for me as well. I'd say, as an engineer, I continue to be excited about the power of technology to change the world, to help the world, to do good. I know big tech gets vilified quite a bit, but I've been front and center, first in Microsoft and now in Meta, and I've seen amazing people do really, really amazing things with technology. And I'm just excited about the possibilities, whether it's the metaverse or it's, other kinds of new applications, applications in industry. I think in the medical field, there's so many good use cases that are coming up. Agriculture, like literally every sector of the economy, I see so much potential for what we could do, and that really gets me still excited to this day.
Well, thank you very much to all of you. I think some of you can stay for our reception, so I'm sure folks will have other questions one-on-one, but please join me in thanking Rogers and all of our panelists.
Thank you, Roger.